I've got two problems with you. One is you're damn near as old as I am. You're too old. You, on the other hand, sent your son over there to get a job and work for a gas company that he had no experience with gas or nothing, in order to get access for the president. So you're selling access to the president just like he was. So
You're a damn liar, man. That's not true. And no one has ever said that. No one has done that. And you want to check my shape on it, let's do push-ups together here, man. Let's run. Let's do whatever you want to do.
Let's take it out context.
Not
I didn't
one.
say you were doing anything wrong.
You said I set up my son to work in an oil company. Isn't that what you said? Get your words straight, Jack.
That was Joe Biden getting into it with a voter today in Iowa. Carol, Brendan, and Neera are back. It was a day of confrontations. There was a little, we had the confrontation last night that out on Twitter between a Buttigieg and a Sanders supporter. But even Nancy Pelosi got into it with a reporter right at the end of her presser today. Let's play a little bit of that one.
Do you hate the president, Madam Speaker? Because
I don't hate anybody.
Representative Collins,
I was raised in a
I
Catholic house. We don't hate anybody, not anybody in the world. So don't you accuse me.
I did not accuse you.
You did.
I asked a question.
You did.
Representative Collins yesterday suggested that the Democrats are doing this simply because they don't like the guy.
I have nothing to do with it. Let me just say this.
I think it's an important point.
think the president is a coward when it comes to helping our kids who are afraid of gun violence. I think he is cruel when he doesn't deal with helping our dreamers, of which we're very proud. I think he's in denial about the climate crisis. However, that's about the election.
All right, who did it better? Look, it is a feistier set of Democrats than we've seen in the past.
I think a carnal fear of Democrats is that they're not tough enough to take on Trump.
Yeah.
It's a fear that they have of every single candidate. And so I have a different view of these things.
You want more of it.
I'm not saying they have to do this all the time, but I think Democrats who stand up for what they believe in, who fight back, who push back, who don't get walked over, I think they are reassuring Democratic voters that every Democratic voter thinks Trump is a street fighter, and you need to have the ability to punch back with Donald Trump.
So this is going to be a pugilistic I mean, the fact of the matter, what you're saying.
What Pelosi said.
Democrats
love what Pelosi said.
Look, Twitter left loved both of them. I mean, the pugilistic campaign, are we prepared for how pugilistic this is going to get?
I think that was a moment that Joe Biden needed. And I think he probably needed it a while ago. You know, all these questions about his son, and there are real questions about it, but he never really fought back. And he never
defend him, right?
He never really showed that he was going to be able to at any point, really. And he fought back there, and it sort of reminded you of old Joe Biden, like, you know, lunch pail Joe Biden, you know, saying how it is. The push-up contest was maybe a little much, but he talking like.
Wasn't he going to take Trump behind the stands in high school or something too? That was so Biden.
I think that was one of the best moments he's had this entire campaign, because it shows that he is who he was. He's alive. He's out there, and he's ready to fight, and that's what people need to see from him.
Well, and in addition to Democrats wanting someone who can take on Trump in that combative kind of way, voters like Trump in part because they see him as a fighter, and they like that in a candidate. And Biden, I was surprised that Biden went. I mean, he immediately went right there and called him a liar.
I was stunned to call a potential voter a liar. I was stunned, and I'm still stunned watching it. But I take your point.
Yeah, but it's also something that his campaign had been worried about him handling it in a way that went too far, where he seemed too angry or kind of lashed out. And this didn't quite get there. It was a little more. I don't think that they're as worried about this as opposed to how he might have done it differently.
Seemed to have his back.
The audience really applauded Biden at the end of the thing.
Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Beat the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.